All right, welcome back and welcome to the show, Cody Stovall. Cody, thanks so much for coming on. We're going to preview this Oklahoma State game because the Ducks, they're 28.5-point favorites. That's where the Montana State line closed at. But it feels like a departure from the esteem that Oklahoma State has been held in. A guy like the coach that you guys have,
Gundy.
Gundy, sorry.
Hey, don't do that. He's a man, okay? He's almost 60 now. Come on.
I put it on the note sheet for you, Owen.
I
so
know.
you have all that stuff.
My screen got messed up. Where is this program at? Because you're coming off a win, but it feels like maybe not necessarily where Cowboys were a couple years ago.
Yeah, no, I mean, the state of the program is a little bit in flux. I guess you could say that. Naturally, the game against UT Martin started off so well. Haas Haney was like giving us, visions of Spencer Sanders early on, and there was a lot of talk like, holy crap, we might be back. We might be good again. We might give Oregon a real run for their money, which I was hoping for, because I've been writing a few checks that my butt cannot cash at the moment. The most recent Oregon show I was on, I said it'll be close. It'll be like 34-31. Okay, maybe not so much, but it will not be a 28-point loss. I feel pretty confident at least going there.
Yeah, because this Oklahoma State program under Coach Mike Gundy has been just a consistent one over the years. Last year was the first year that you guys didn't make a bowl game since his first year. Is the feeling that because he is such a solidified coach that he is going to correct things and send things in the right direction overall?
I mean, when somebody has 20 years worth of successful track record, I do think that you have to give him at least a little bit of leeway. Now, it is a completely new age of college football, the NIL realignment era. There's been several coaches like Mike Gundy, Dabo Swinney, that were very reluctant to get involved, right? And Gundy even mentioned recently, we didn't get into the NIL stuff until this season. Last year, we spent like $5 million, but it was just on a handful of guys. This is the first year that Oklahoma State's creeping into that, probably 13, 15-ish mil when it comes to NIL. It pales in comparison to a lot of the upper echelon teams in the country, but it's a good start, right? And I think that's Mike Gundy embracing the fact that he understands that he had to make some changes. And we went very, very heavy in the portal. And that either goes one of two ways, right? Whenever you get 50-plus new dudes in the portal, it either works really, really well, right? Like Mel Tuckle a couple of years ago at Michigan State, a couple of years ago Florida State. But it also can go disastrously like Florida State this previous year. So we don't know necessarily what we have, but at least it's a little bit exciting. We have a better brand of football than last year. That's pretty visible at least.
Yeah, Cody, I'm sure Oregon fans spent this whole offseason talking about what a new quarterback's going to look like. Dante Moore came in and impressed people in week 1 against Montana State. Oklahoma State's replacing its quarterback too, but not necessarily planned. What is the drop-off between Haney and Flores, and what should fans expect?
Well, I mean, we haven't seen a lot of Zane Flores, right? What we saw at UT Martin is the extent of what he's gotten in his college career. Now, coming into Oklahoma State, he was viewed very highly. He was Nebraska, Mr. Nebraska Player of the Year, Gatorade Player of the Year. I think he still holds the Nebraska's records for all passing yards. So he came in very highly touted, made it to the final 15 of the Elite 11. So we've been waiting on the Zane train to take off. But then Haas Haney showed up, right? And as I've discussed on some other podcast, Oklahoma State with Haas Haney had enough speed to at least be competitive in that department against Oregon. Without Haas Haney, it does change the complexion of this offense quite a bit. Zane Flores is going to be more of a pocket passer. He does have a mobile presence, but he's not Haas. Haas Haney is not a run-first guy, but you know the drill, right? Whenever you have a quarterback like a Bo Nix, like a Dylan Gabriel, if they have the ability to get out and run a 4.40, you kind of want them to run occasionally. The downside is injuries, and that's precisely what happened to Haas. As soon as we got a taste of what things could be, he broke his foot. So now we go to more of the traditional pocket passer presence in Zane Flores, and I think we are going to have to get a little bit more creative. With Haas Haney, the defensive line couldn't exactly pin their ears back 24/7 because he is so fast, he's so elusive that you have to find a way to contain him, right? Zane Flores is a little bit of a different animal, and as UT Martin showed against Zane Flores, who doesn't have the running escapability, they can pin their ears back. And so I won't lie, Oregon's D-line is a little scary right now. I'm not getting a ton of sleep at the moment.
That's what we just finished talking about too.
Yeah, when Haney does go and lead to touchdown drives on those first 2 possessions, how much can you really feel like you can take away from what Flores did in that first game? Because it wasn't the starter going into that. He wasn't being prepped to be the starter. Do you feel like there will be some changes in the game plan and throughout practice this week as they lead up to this Oregon game, knowing that Flores is going to be the starter?
Significantly, right? Because obviously Haas Haney is going to be reading the defensive end and the linebackers on an RPO style of situation a little bit more so than a Zane Flores. In order for the zone blocking scheme to work, though, you have to be able to create cutback lanes. We did that against UT Martin, but our running backs weren't hitting the holes, right? And that's the biggest thing. Of course, there's going to be a drop-off to some degree from Haas Haney to Zane Flores. You mentioned we didn't get to see a lot of what Zane could do. He did drop a couple beautiful passes, and then there towards the latter half of the game, he started getting in rhythm, right? He started looking comfortable. He started driving us down the field in the fourth quarter. The second and third quarter, though, they were just kind of ugly. So we don't know precisely what we have, but I do know that in order for Zane to have any success in Eugene, Oregon, our running backs are going to have to do more. Live, it really felt like the offensive line was the biggest culprit to the deficiencies we had. But I went back and watched most of the game, and that's not really the case. Our offensive line did create holes. They did create mismatch opportunities. Our running backs were just not seeing the cutbacks. And that has to change in Eugene, or it's going to be a long day.
Well, what is the running back room like there? Is it guys who should be hitting the holes, or is that something you guys maybe expected coming into this week?
Well, so it's funny you ask. Coming into fall, RB1 was a true freshman who played a little bit last year, Rodney Fields. He's been banged up, right? He was banged up a little bit in the spring, a little bit in the fall. So it's still up in the air if he's going to make the trip to Eugene, Oregon to play. If Rodney Fields is healthy and he does play, it does add a different dynamic. The number 2 for most of the fall was Trent Hallen, the big 6'3", 255-pound running back transfer from Indiana that led to Indiana in rushing a couple years ago. Well, he didn't get to play against UT Martin either. So if we have either one of those dudes back, you do feel much more comfortable going into Oregon. But I will say the running back that has been causing all of the noise in the fall and in the spring was OU transfer Caleb Hicks. So since we didn't have Rodney and we didn't have Trent, Caleb Hicks got the start against UT Martin. And for all of the talk about how phenomenal he was in the fall, that did not show up on the field against UT Martin.
Yeah, I was interested to see when I was looking through some of the stats from that game that PFF tracked all of his yards as coming after contact in that game. Do you feel like he was the offensive? You said he was getting kind of those holes from the offensive line and wasn't taking advantage. Do you think that was on him, just kind of running into dudes and not being as familiar and comfortable within the offense and being able to make those reads?
100%, right? It's very visible that he has a propensity to try to bounce it outside. Right. And when you have top-notch speed, right, that is something that you try to do. But at this level, right, you have to be able to run between the tackles. And it's almost a shame because the 1 or 2 times he did run through the tackles, he absolutely dominated a linebacker and sent the linebacker flying 2 yards backwards. So he can do it. But against UT Martin, he seemingly kept trying to pop everything outside. And you pause the film and you see a hole, right? You see a hole in the B gap, and he's already past the hole. So, they always talk about you want to hit the hole hard, but you also have to have that beautiful amount of patience. That's something Caleb Hicks is going to have to establish in order for the Cowboys to have some success against the Ducks, because there's going to be lanes, but if you're already running too far away to get to them and you're trying to extend east to west against Oregon, it's never going to work. Right? We might have enough speed to make things interesting, but if we try to go east to west and outrun Oregon, we're going to get decimated, fellas.
I'm sure, because do you see the Taco Dowler quote? He just said these guys are like freak athletes. The difference from the SCS to the FBS level.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, Taco Dowler played unbelievably in that game. He's a guy who feels like he's going to get a shot. What are the keys for Oklahoma State to get a chance in this game? Because it feels like we were just talking about the fact that the Ducks look so strong top to bottom.
Yeah.
And, it feels like there's not really a drop-off from 1 to 2 to 3 on the depth chart. How does Oklahoma State overcome that? Like, can it? It feels like it can.
Well, Mike Gundy did mention it in his press conference this morning, right? When he was asked about the offensive line, he kind of reiterated, he didn't go into depth, but he did say that they actually didn't play all that bad. They just need to play more physical, right? So in order for them to have any success in Eugene, they're going to have to be significantly more physical. That's first of all. Second of all, it doesn't matter if the running backs aren't seeing the lane. So we got to get some participation out of the running back room. And I'll tell you, the most important factor to the Cowboys staying into this game is going to be our defense. And primarily the South Carolina Wendell Gregory, who began his Oklahoma State career by tying an all-time Big 12 record with 3 sacks in his first game ever. If he can bring that energy to Eugene, Oregon, that is somebody that you guys are going to have to pay attention to. So whether it's the running back chipping out of the backfield or adding a tight end, you have the same dude in Ugalele. I'm probably murdering his name, and I should be punched in the throat for it. But you have that level of dude too. So we're going to have to do the same thing. We're going to have to put in a little bit of extra protection. The difference is on the other side of the D-line, you still have problems. We don't know what we have in the other side of the defensive line. We know what we have out of Wendell Gregory, but the other side, it's been Deshaun Brown and Julio Johnson. Well, Deshaun Brown's out. They haven't given a timeline for how long he's out, but that's one of our starting defensive ends that will not be playing against Oregon. So now it's going to come up to Jaleel Johnson. Is he going to be able to come together? We didn't see Kyron Duhon. Kyron Duhon was a freshman All-American, had 7 sacks last year at UTEP, had several SEC and Big Ten offers, turned them down to come to Stillwater. He didn't play against UT Martin, and he's supposed to be a massive cog in this machine. So I think defensively, this is where we're going to have to carry over. Middle linebacker, Akron transfer, had a 5th-round draft grade, comes to Oklahoma State, started his career. He had 14 tackles and 2 tackles for loss the other day. Another transfer, outside linebacker, Brandon Walls, chipped in another 11 tackles. We had really good play out of our corners. That was the most surprising thing. No Jalen Davies, and we don't know if he's hurt or he couldn't. We don't know why he wasn't out there. But without Jalen Davies, I was a little concerned. I will admit that our cornerbacks actually looked really good against UT Martin. So defensively, we have some hope.
Yeah, because defensive was one of the main things I wanted to ask you about, because that was something that this team really struggled with last year was the defense. It was towards the bottom in against both the pass and the run. So do you feel like the impact from some of those new guys can be felt already? And how do you feel like because as I was looking at it, I feel like secondary is one of the places that it seemed like there was some of the most there was the least turnover. You had guys who were coming back in terms of like Dylan Smith at safety and Cam Smith, a guy who was starting at corner for the team last year. So do you feel like some of that continuity year over year just can help a little bit?
Well, continuity is typically the name of the game in Stillwater, Oklahoma, right? Which is why we traditionally held on to coaches for 14, 17, 19 years. This is all new, but it had to happen. Mike Gundy had to fire everybody, and he had to completely rebuild. And why we have faith is because he rebuilt with an entire SEC staff. Todd Grantham started in his SEC days in 2015 with Mississippi State. But if you look at the 7 coaches that he brought with him, they all tie back to those original days at Mississippi State in 2015. They coached together at Georgia. They coached together at Bama. They coached together at Florida. A couple of them went off into the NFL. Now they're all back together again in Stillwater. And that's what we did, right? When we mentioned the NIL money being significantly bigger finally in Stillwater, fellas, most of that was all D-line and linebackers. Most of the NIL went to the D-line and linebackers, and that is where we need to see the biggest differentiation between this year's squad and last year's squad is against Oregon. Because against UT Martin, we were in the backfield all day, right? That wasn't an issue getting back there. But we missed out on a few sacks, right? We missed out on a couple more tackles for loss. We missed out on a couple more batted balls. So getting in the backfield and having the results of living in the backfield are 2 different things that we have to see against Oregon. And you mentioned the secondary. Yes, we do have Landon Cleveland coming back, 4-star coming out of high school this previous season, was one of our highest rated dudes, played a little bit as a freshman, but now this is his redshirt freshman season, right? So this is his opportunity. We bring Cam Smith back. We bring Cale Smith back. Kenneth Harris Jr., he's 2 years in the system now. He played like a man possessed the other day. So yeah, again, defensively, there's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of reasons for hope. There's a lot to look at and say, you know what? Should we beat Oregon? No. Are we good enough to at least keep it close? If the defense plays well, absolutely. And consolation prizes are for the birds, okay? Yes, we can all agree with that. But if Oklahoma State goes and they're competitive against Oregon and we can come back to Stillwater with our heads held high. That's okay. I hate consolation prizes, but at the same point in time, fellas, I don't know about you guys, but Oregon looked like one of the best teams in America over the weekend, right? They looked significantly better than Bama. They look way better than South Carolina. They look way better than Notre Dame. They look better than Miami. Like, I don't know very many teams that played this weekend that you could have said, oh, yeah, they're better than Oregon. Even Ohio State, they played good, but better than Oregon good? I don't think so.
Yeah, see, this is where we're at because, we're trying to figure out, hey, like, where is Oregon? Because the question before the season was, is this a national championship year for the Ducks? And it feels like after this weekend, we say that, yes, this is absolutely a year they can contend. But the big question that I had coming out of this weekend is can this offensive line hold up against FBS talent? Because we saw them be really strong. Dante Moore I think it was one hurry, never touched in the game against Montana State. But is that going to happen against Oklahoma State? Does that feel like really that is the opportunity? Because we haven't seen Dante Moore under pressure. When he was under pressure a couple of years ago in his freshman year at UCLA, he didn't look great. Is that really kind of the inflection point here?
Oh, 100%. And then that's what Todd Grantham's always been known for. He's a pressure guy. He likes to send blitzes almost every down from crazy angles. We didn't see any of that against UT Martin, right? But if you go back and look at Todd Grantham's track record, that's who he is. Even back at Florida when he had the number 2 ranked SEC defense, number 7 ranked rush defense in the country, he's an aggressive dude. That's how Todd Grantham likes to make his living. Now, that does open up opportunities to get burnt in the back end sometimes. And that's what Florida fans will tell you about Todd Grantham. He's great on first and second down. He's great at sacks and tackles for loss. But third and Grantham was a saying that was trending in Florida country. My guess is after Florida, did his stop with Saban kind of correct him, right? Because everybody gives Saban a lot of credit that if you need to kind of refix your career, you go to the Saban school. And that's what Todd Grantham did. He left Florida, went and coached the D-line at Alabama under Nick Saban. Hopefully, he learned how to navigate third downs a little bit better in that one.
So do you feel like those explosives are kind of an area that the Oregon can take advantage of in some of those third down situations if they find the matchup they like? And with guys like DeCorian Moore, who in an instant he can be gone for a 40-yard touchdown, do you feel like they can take advantage a little bit there? And if Oklahoma State is being physical in the front seven on the line of scrimmage in a way that Oregon didn't have to face against Montana State, do you think they can utilize Dante Moore's arm talent to kind of hit those shots over the top?
Unfortunately, yes. But it's a calculated risk, right? So if we try to show up to Eugene and go 11 on 11, man on man, all daggone day, it's going to get ugly. So Todd Grantham's going to have to take some risk. Well, where do you take the risk at? If you spend all of your money in the defensive line and the linebackers, that's where you got to take your risk at, right? So I think we have to be overly aggressive, which is going to put us in a precarious situation at times in the back end. But the chess match is, can being overly aggressive knock Dante Moore off his platform enough to give the DBs time to recover? If that's the case, then all you are is a few turnovers away from this thing getting kind of ugly. I mean, look at Georgia Tech, Colorado.
Yep.
Like, Colorado beat them more often than not all day. But when you start the game with 3 turnovers and then your quarterback starts missing passes that are wide open in the end zone, it has a snowball effect to it. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to catch lightning in a bottle in Eugene and just make it an ugly, dirty, muddy, nasty fist fight. Because 2 weeks ago, I was yelling, hooting, and hollering for a track meet. I wanted all of that smoke. I wanted all of that Oregon. Now I don't. Okay, I'm retracting a little bit of this mouthpiece here. I don't want to track meet with Oregon anymore. Now I want a dogfight. All right.
When you look back at that other side of the ball on offense, what do you feel like the game plan is going to be for Oklahoma State with Flores at quarterback? Obviously having to change things up without Haney's speed out there and being able to kind of use that threat in the quarterback run game. How do you think this game plan is going to attack? Is it going to be trying to rely on that run game and get that outside zone game kind of going, or is it going to be a little bit more drop back kind of stuff?
I think it's going to be old school. I think it's going to be Brandon Weeden, Justin Blackman style of offense in 2011 when Weeden would get the ball out of his hand in like 2.7 seconds. That was it, right? Brandon Weeden wasn't trying to do anything fancy. He wasn't trying to read a defense and pick it apart. Brandon Weeden was about getting the ball out as fast as he could and throwing it to certain spots. right? Giving the wide receivers and running backs room in the open field to make some crazy things happen. I feel like that's probably the route we should go, because if we try to just hand the ball off, run a traditional offense, whether it's zone blocking scheme or not, I think you're playing into Oregon's hands. And as fast as you guys can operate, if we get down 21-0, that's all she wrote, fellas. We have to keep this thing ugly, dirty, nasty, close. It's got to be a little bit of a fist fight. If you can take a fist fight into the fourth quarter, then you have a chance. But if there's ever a point in this game where we have to play catch up, I think that's where it could put us in a precarious situation moving forward. And as dominant as your front seven looked, I think we would be wise to utilize the guys on the outside and just try to get you guys running east to west over and over and over and over again, because you have crazy depth, right? We need to see that. We need to run tempo so much, so far, so fast that it forces you guys to rotate. And maybe in those rotations is where we can catch a dude napping here and there.
How do you feel like a guy like Terrell Davis kind of fits into those plans as a guy who can make those explosives? Saw a couple of them last week. And then what was the expectation with him just in the program? Because obviously the huge season last year at Central Oklahoma, was he a guy that people feel like can really change games with some of his explosivity in the pass game?
Yes, especially because of his emergence this quickly, right? We just got him in the fall from UCO, and you just mentioned he had like 1,609 yards receiving at UCO. Was All-American, led the country in a lot of different categories, not just at Division II level, but also Division I. But that's a big step up, right? Going from D2 to Power 4 football, it's a big transition. So everyone was excited about his versatility, his athleticism, his 40-inch vertical, and his speed. But was he going to be able to understand the offense? Was he going to be able to understand the necessary spacing? Was he going to be able to understand the different nuances of why this route has to be this exact way? We thought that would take some time. It didn't, fellas. That's the crazy part. The fact that he was able to come in a matter of a couple months, not only pick up the system, pick up all the route concepts, get on the same page with the quarterbacks, and make a big name for himself. That's why we're excited, because we did bring in Shamar Rigby from Purdue that started all season as a true freshman, right? And we also have 6'5", 225-pound Io Shotomai King coming over. And Jalen Lloyd, the speedster, national champion in track and field from Nebraska, had a 600-yard receiving season in Nebraska and a 400-yard receiving season in Nebraska. And he beat out all of them dudes. So some of the heavy hitters from the biggest programs around the country that we paid big boy money, he came in from D2 and beat all those dudes out in just like 2 months. That's why we're excited. You hear the concept of raw. He's raw. He is. But he has the things that you can't coach.
Cody, before we get into some score predictions here, just to close it out, we've talked a little bit about where Oklahoma is, where Oregon is. If Oregon gets this win on Saturday, is this a legit feather in the cap win? Can the Ducks hang their hat and say we beat a very good team here, or does it feel like a win is just hey, yes, we should have won, but we really should have won, and this doesn't really say anything about the skill level of our program. Where does this kind of fit into that scale of quality wins?
I think it is a feather in the cap, right? It's going to be towards the latter half of the season before we can dictate how big of the feather that is. But like I just mentioned, when you go get Wendell Gregory from South Carolina, Jalen Davies, Savili Kavusi from UCLA, J.K. Johnson from LSU, Morcada McDaniel from Florida, Demarion Thomas from Vanderbilt. Whenever you go get all these dudes that started at Big Ten and SEC schools, I mean, you have to have faith that talent level is going to shine out on the field. Now, it might not happen, right? But at the end of the day, Oregon can sit back and say this wasn't Montana State. This is a team that did heavily invest in SEC talent to rebuild their roster. So if we can beat them athletically, physically, we're beating a team that is at least in the conversation of on our level.
All right. Well, so like I said there, we're going to get into some score predictions here as Cody wraps up his time with us. Cody, we'll start with you. What is a realistic prediction? I know you said it's not going to be that huge spread. How close is it going to be?
So I originally was puffing my chest out, real proud, and I said 34-31 the last Oregon show. I'm not going to make that mistake here. All right, fellas. But I do think it's nowhere near that 28-point margin. I think that offensively we may have some struggles. Defensively, I think we're able to create enough turmoil to keep it close. with that being said, I feel like it's probably – I'll stick with that 34 number, but I think it's going to be more like 34-10 range, 34-14. I'll go 34-14.
Yeah, for me, I have it 38-13 right now. I think Oregon's offense just has a level of explosiveness that Oklahoma State didn't see last week, and has some things that they can. Dan Lang talked about. They have more things in the back. They did not pull out everything against a team in Montana State that they really didn't feel like they have to. But I think I'm excited to see what the defense does for Oregon this weekend. In terms of you are playing a team that has legitimate guys up front and who have starting experience at the Power 5 level.
Right.
And how does that look in the trenches when you're just matching up against the level of athletes that you're going to play throughout the rest of the season? But I think that Oregon's talent across the board is going to be a little bit too much. And I think that because if there wasn't a quarterback change, if you weren't trying to deal with that at the same time, I think Oklahoma State could be a lot more of a threat. But I think that really limits what Oklahoma State can do offensively, especially if you're not able to get the ball in Davis's hands and be able to make those big plays downfield and take advantage of some of the younger guys that Oregon does have in their secondary. So I would go with 38-13. I think Oregon's, I don't think it can cover that 28.5 point spread, but I think it will be around a 20-ish point game because Oregon is just a different level in terms of the athletes that they have.
Let me add another touchdown. You gave me a good idea. I think we are gonna get cute, right? I think we're gonna have to pull off like double reverse, Hail Mary style of thing. So that we'll get a cutesy touchdown. So I'll say 34-21. All right. Now I can sleep. Now I can sleep better at night.
I was gonna give you guys 35-17. I'm in the same boat with you where I do think the jump kind of to a power forward level will not surprise the Ducks necessarily, but it does make an impact. I think Oklahoma State really can score against this Ducks defense because we saw, that it's not perfect. A guy like Taco Dowler is able to make a couple guys miss and have there was like a 30-yard gain in that game. I feel like I'll give you enough credit for 17 points, but I'm really excited to see what Dante Moore can do when he has to problem solve. We were talking about this earlier. Because he really, there were only a couple moments there in the Montana State game where he had to say, hey, something's not right. Let me make an adjustment at the line. Let me do something on the fly here. I think that's going to happen way more often in this game. And I believe in him to be able to make those decisions accurately because we were talking about how much he's matured since those UCLA, the starts, the year there down in LA. I think this is a really big proving ground for a guy like him because it's not Montana State. Like you said, this is a legit program.
Yeah, I think we're going to dial it up and make it difficult on him. So I'll be honest with you, I'm intrigued to see how this goes as well because I've been kind of down on Dante Moore. I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise.
Oh, of course. That's legit.
Yeah, I it's hard to judge what a true freshman does, but he was a true freshman at UCLA. What he had 11 touchdowns, 9 picks, 1,600 yards. So not great, right? Not bad, just kind of and then I watched the Oregon spring game. He threw a couple NFL dimes, but he also threw a couple dead ducks too, right? So when I watched your spring game, I said, they're not going to beat the tar out of us because you guys got blessed with Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix. You guys have been spoiled is what it is. You guys have been so spoiled with phenomenal quarterback play that now you go back to a quarterback that's probably pretty doggone good, but is he NFL getting legit snaps good? That's that I don't necessarily think so, but Oregon has enough talent around him that it may not matter all that much. I just know that I would imagine that Oklahoma State has an emphasis on being much more aggressive, much more physical, and making Dante Moore beat us. Like, is he going to drop some dimes for 60 yards? Very, very possible. But we're going to make him do that. And we're going to make him do that with some 6'5", 275 pound dudes in his face.
Awesome. Cody, I want to give you a chance here. You've been so fantastic with us to plug Locked On a little bit. Where can people watch your stuff?
Yeah, so Locked On Oklahoma State. I try to keep it simplistic. You know what I mean? I try not to make life overly complicated. You can also find me on the Twitterverse, X, at Aldeo State, and then all the other social media thingamahobbies. What is it? O State All Day. That's how much I'm on them. That's how technically advanced I am, guys.
Awesome. Well, yeah, Cody, thank you so much again. It's been a great experience talking to you. I mean, best of luck to the Cowboys because I'm really excited. This is the best time in college football because you get to really learn about these programs that we haven't seen for so long. our show will be live after the game around 6 once we wrap
cool.
up media responsibilities. And we'll be back every Monday now at 5 p.m. Go watch Cody's show. We'd love to have you back here. It's going to be a big year for Ducks and the Cowboys. We're really excited to see. Cody, thanks so much. John, it's been great. I'm Owen Murray. We'll see you on Saturday.